I'm really excited, especially because we have the Minnesota connection. So that's super funny.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about that. But hey, back
Yeah.
in bold. Oh, it's actually not a beautiful day in Deutschland. It's a little dreary. We had all this sun. It was feeling so beautiful. I thought it was summer finally in Deutschland. Guten Tag. I've been in Munich for almost 2 months now. Got a couple more to go. Probably stay till Oktoberfest. But I'm with
All
my
right.
friend here. I think I can use your first name, right? You're not that secretive.
Go for it. Go for it.
Dennis the Menace, we met on the Twitter. He's a dude. He's a German dude that's fallen in love with Brazil. So we connected on two different aspects, and we'll talk about the Minnesota part. But I thought you were interesting talker on the Twitter relating to Deutschland things because I don't know. I meet Germans outside of Germany, and it's like they're like a whole different person than when I'm living in Germany and being around them. And I really want to get into this whole like schism and what is life in Germany and the people and we're gonna talk about a lot of good things today. So I'm excited. Dennis, give the people a quick little background. Why do you think they should to listen to you? And yeah, tell me.
Or why they shouldn't listen to me. No, dude, I appreciate. First of all, I really, like you said, like I've enjoyed your content on Twitter, especially when you've been in my home country in Germany and getting that observation from a person from outside. Because I think that I had the same thing in Brazil. People were so fascinated with some of the stuff that I noticed, because to them it was normal. And some of the stuff that you've picked up, I thought was so interesting. And yeah, and so that's how I think I found you also on Instagram, and then that is that. Yeah, I'm from, as you can tell by the accent still. I try to fake a little bit when I came back from Minnesota, which you're going to talk about when I was an exchange student. Now it's more molded into a European, Brazilian, English, whatever English type version of that. But I'm from a city called Bremen, the north. Most people might not know it. They might know the town musicians. Maybe there's a little tale poem, so it's close to Hamburg. And then I lived in the US as an exchange student, and then I moved to Berlin for studying and work. Trained journalist originally. That was my initial career that I wanted to go into, and then I stumbled into tech sales. Berlin is, kind of the tech or the startup hub in Germany. And I've always had a thing for that, entrepreneurship, and had my own thing at one point. Dropped out of uni, didn't work out. I actually the guy that mentored me was an American guy from a former guy from U.S. politics from New York. And then, I moved to Portugal after I had financially stabilized myself again, and kept working in tech sales, software sales at that point. Was there for 3.5 years. And I think that's also where my appreciation for Brazil, especially Portuguese language, but Brazil in particular, actually goes way more back than that. And then I was back in Berlin for a new job. Didn't work out in the end, and then I just spent a couple months in Brazil, which was long overdue for various reasons. And the funny thing is, I didn't expect this. I mean, I came back on Twitter because of Elon, what he was doing with free speech and everything. But at the same time, I wasn't aware of this community where I would meet people like yourself, right? Like there's like all these cool people who are. I always thought of. So my brother did the whole nomad thing to this day. He's 3 years younger than I am, and he is very much alike. But I think in some regards he's more of a hippie is the wrong word, but I think like I was always very driven with business, and he was more about also other things. And so for me, like traveling always had this sort of stigma. And what I realized from this Twitter community, there's so many cool people doing both. Like they're like myself, they're into business and they like growing personally into not just enjoy and do nothing, but then also kind of combining the best of both. And so that I've become self-employed as of last year, so that was kind of nice. I didn't have to ask anyone, and I extended my stay in Brazil for max out to 3 months, and now I've applied for a visa and waiting for that. And so in the meantime, back in Berlin and organizing a few things for work. So that was kind of me in short.
Yeah, a lot of things. We were kind of chatting it beforehand. I really want to get into that clickbaity. You said you're doing a little journalist work beforehand, which goes into a lot of kind of modern day social media and Deutschland media, because what you see online versus what I'm observing here is kind of different. We'll talk about this, but about this Twitter community, yeah, dude, I've met a lot of people on here. My account's not that big whatsoever, but like I've had like 8 or 10 dudes on my podcast from the Twitter, and it seems like everyone wants to do something. It's like on Instagram, you can post something and people leave comments, but you're not having like lively discussions. There's no place that has this sort of community feel, in my opinion, than Twitter. But man, you need to be very careful because you get thrown in bubbles like crazy. And then, if other people come into these bubbles, they look at it from their view. They're like, what the hell are these dudes talking about? Like, and then you got the whole Nazi part. I mean, that's huge on Twitter right now. I mean, I love free speech, but there comes a point where it turns into 4chan. And it's just like, Jesus, is all this going to get pushed? And I know it's about algorithms and so forth, but
oh, really? You have that stuff in your feed, like actual Nazi stuff?
Oh, yeah. A lot of the Israel-Palestine things, or a lot of the Jewish things, I mean, are thrown up there, are left and right. And I think this nomad community is good. They're still a little crazy in that too. But overall, if you can take the positives and leave, the negatives and don't get lost in the sauce, I definitely think it's a great networking place at the moment, especially for dudes kind of who would like to think independently. At least we say we are, even though we're probably in, bubbles as well. But, just making things happening, not just consuming, but also, making something out of these whole social networks.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually, if I think about it now, in Brazil, I've met, it's crazy, one guy, because of him, I went to my first bloco. You know what that is, right? These carnival parades basically in Rio. Then that guy also hooked me up with my first apartment in Rio. Then I met another guy at Carnival who I think has now gone back to Brazil. I've met I haven't met him in person, unfortunately, but he is helping me with the visa now because I've been following his stuff for a long time. And yeah, then I started talking to you at one point. So yeah, it's super fascinating. And again, I feel like you just said, it's a very different group, very different people that I didn't realize they even existed, to be honest. Because like you said, like Instagram it's more cozy. LinkedIn, of course, in a much better way, and that's all nice. But this is a whole different thing. This is very like libertarian-minded people, I would almost say, like very freedom focused. And like you said, sometimes also a little bit double standards about how we do and think. But yeah, I didn't have this on my plan, to be honest. I just wanted to get entertained on Twitter and go to Brazil, and then sort of that merged.
Yeah, especially the Latin America gringo Twitter. Those dudes are a different breed. They take differently. Yeah. Who's the guy you're doing with? Is that the Bowtie Brazil or which one?
The ones that I met. The one that I met.
No, the one that helped you with your apartment or the visa. You're saying you've been following him for a while.
He's an American guy. He's called Jeremy. I think it called the Way of Jerts. I think it's his.
Way of Jerts. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty cool guy, very cool guy, and yeah, so he's been helping me setting that up.
All right, beautiful. Okay, hey, main topic. Now that I'm living in Germany, I just kind of want to go over your guys' culture, the way you think, the way things are around here. I'm fascinating. Like I was in Latin America the whole past year, and I was dying to get back to a place that had some sort of civilization structure. It was clean. I actually wanted rules. I'm as anti-rules as I get, but after the chaoticness for so long down under, I'm like, I'll wait at a red light and won't cross the street until it's green, even if there's no cars. Right? I was craving it, but I want to talk to you about Deutschland, because obviously you're ready to get the hell out of there. What are the pros? What are the cons? Just the overall like German mindset. It does seem like you guys are all wrapped around one groupthink type of attitude, and things do work. I think we're starting to see a slow decline in some aspects, especially in the social media. I mean, if you just look on social media, you think Germany is Muslim, you think Germany is like dead. I haven't experienced that. I know I'm in a little kind of bubble here in Munich, but let's just get into Deutschland for the foreigners and what's really happening here, and what is the mindset of the German.
Yeah, I think like what I was saying earlier is that if you've left the country a few times, it changes how you look at your own country. So I think my way of looking at Germany was even different before I went to Brazil, and then coming back, because what happens is like I said, the way people look at your country and the questions people ask you kind of makes you reflect on your country in different, much new ways about the language, about the history, things that you've never thought about because you're just kind of living it. And again, that was the same with your tweets. I think you hit the nail on the head, in particular when the collective culture that we still have, and I think again a lot of it's really influenced by what happened after World War II and the whole shame thing of, again, what were horrendous crimes. We don't even have to talk about it, but I think the way how it has shaped the collective psyche of being very apologetic, of being very meek and apologetic of what other people are, even if other people are doing bad things to you, and not having that kind of pride. So yeah, it's sad. It's honestly, it makes me sad. I'm kind of hoping that we're seeing a shift towards a more healthier way of, like, one thing we can still acknowledge that, what happened in the past was very bad, but then also where we're kind of moving to. And I feel right now, on one side, it doesn't feel like it, because, like, if you look at who's in charge, the companies running, the parties running the government and the country, and where the media is still leaning towards too, that's one thing. But then what's kind of brewing under the surface is people are just getting fed up with it, with a lot of very heated topics, as you know, as you've noticed, right? And yeah, I think we're seeing that in a lot of um, what do you call these surveys ahead of elections, basically the polls, where it's brewing and people are just looking at reality, and it doesn't really match what the government is doing. It doesn't match what the media is saying. And yeah, I'm very curious where things are going to go, because I feel like it's kind of boiling at this point. I don't know to what, like, where it's going to end. But I think the interesting thing in that sense, it's similar to what you saw or what you see right now in the US. A lot of, I think, any kind of westernized country to some degree is facing that right now, and I feel like it's kind of tipping in the other direction. But I don't know where it's going to go. But Germany is definitely part of that. And yeah, I mean, there's I the sad thing about it is, I really still like my country. That's what I realized when I came back. As much as I love Brazil, I realized it's safe here. There's a lot of good things about, like, that my country has to offer, and I think that's also why people like myself, we kind of want to fight for that, and to preserve that. And that doesn't mean, we want to glorify the past. I'm not even talking about the Nazi period. I'm talking about in general the past of Germany. I'm not saying that we shouldn't transform and kind of develop in new directions and adjust to the times, but yeah, the way it's going right now, it's not so much my cup of tea.
Yeah, I think one of my tweets was about having dinner with Germans, and it was just like a sob fest, and apology and shame. I said, "Are you kidding me? And you guys are home to basically all the Holy Roman Empire. The First Reich was the Holy Roman Empire. The Second Reich was the German Empire, right? Like, there's so much beautiful history throughout Deutschland, all these amazing cities, like beauty, all the things you guys have done, but it always comes back to World War II, right? And I'm not an Axis allies. Like, I'm starting to really get into World War II now, but we all know there's two sides to every story on the war, right? And there's not necessarily always good or evil. There's bad parts to every single person, and it's just like every place I go to, the population is never this, like, shameful. I mean, it's like a Twilight Zone episode about, like, they got drilled into their skull as a kid, like, you need to be sorry for the rest of your life and you need to make up for it forever. It's just like, this is not healthy. This doesn't feel, sane. And it's like a psychosis, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating to observe. But the more conversations I have with people, the more I do feel the sentiment of, like, okay, we've done a lot for people. We've taken all these different people. We've done a lot of things in the EU. We've rebuilt our country, and maybe we can have some pride, and maybe there is something
Yeah.
here to preserve. And we built a lot of beautiful things, right? So I've noticed that once people are kind of not in big groups or around other people, the mask, so to say, starts slipping, and you see the old Deutschland pride, which is good. I want to see it. I got German blood. I want you guys to be leading the EU, for one, because we have a lot of military bases here. So it's good that, we have our interest at hand. But no, there's so much history here that I've been through. I started really getting into the First Reich, the Holy Roman Empire, and all the old cities, like you got the Nurembergs and all these different cities that had insane history, and we need to promote that.
Yeah, and I think that's the sad thing about this, but I think this is all done very deliberately and by design, is to how even these words that you just said, I agree with everything, and I think that's very much relatable to the US in many, many ways, is that's kind of that gets twisted. So for example, when you say, I want to leave the EU, that gets automatically then translated to, okay, I'm anti-Europe or whatever. And it's like, no, like, we very much need Europe, and I think that it's a beautiful continent. But the question is, like, how are things going right now? If you look at what's happening, how we basically govern most of what's happening is like being regulated from Brussels, which is a beautiful city. Don't get me wrong, but again, like I feel it's about questioning that as a setup and not sort of what's behind it. And again, like I'm even very much behind with what the EU originally stood for. It was a beautiful idea. It's a nice idea, but again, just like NATO, I think these things have sort of been removed from what they originally were founded for. And I think calling that out doesn't make you an extremist or anything, but of course, it's how they're going to frame it, because that's a good way to disqualify you. And yeah, I think more and more people are sort of fighting back on this and say, you know what, whatever, do it. Then label me whatever you want. I've come to that point now. I've had people, unfollow me on Instagram, and I realize, you know what, I don't care. Like I'm just going to keep saying what I think. And yeah, I feel that that's encouraging other people. Ironically, the funny thing is, a lot of people at one point they will like they text you, they're like, dude, I wouldn't have the balls to say this, but appreciate it. And then maybe one of them is going to start talking more openly, more confidently at, I don't know, when they're at a dinner party, and that's going to sort of create a ripple effect where I don't even, like you said, like I don't want to get people to get into our tribe or bubble, whatever you want to call it, but at least like sort of invite them to new ideas and different ideas, and then sort of reflect, and then make different decisions, but not just be in this one guide direction and never looking left, right, or center, right? So, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
What about the Muslim topic? Because this is a huge thing on the social medias. Before I came to Germany, I mean, it was like the whole country was overran and Sharia law was being practiced. Now that I've been here, I haven't seen it as much. I went to Lechut, Passau, Salzburg in Austria. In Munich, I'm in the city center. So, but you go outside of it, you start seeing it more. What is the truth on this topic? I mean, I heard like Cologne and Frankfurt. I mean, if you go outside the Platz, it's all Muslims. Is this true or not?
Yeah, I mean, I invite you to come to Berlin also. I mean, I hope we're going to make that happen anyway. But yeah, it's where do you start? The obviously, are you familiar with how this all started initially, more or less?
Is it the Syrian thing, the refugees?
No, I mean,
Oh,
it was,
Turks, the Turks, the
yeah,
Turks. The Turks are
exactly. So,
first.
so that was even before. So it was kind of like, I think it was in the 50s or 60s, and help build up the country. Started very small, I think, at one point, and then I don't think anyone thought about that these guys would stay, right? And eventually they did stay, and then they sort of brought their relatives here and started families, and which is all fine in principle. But I think even back then, I mean, I was born. When are you born? What year? How old are you?
95, 28,
Ah,
but I
okay.
look
Ah,
young.
you're my brother's age. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was born in 92. And even when I grew up, there was this kind of stigma around that, because they were not really properly integrated, I think, because based on the religion, it was a different culture. And it's funny, even today, the Turks that I meet who are from Istanbul, which is a very modern city, actually, a lot of it, a lot of the folks that come here, they say that the kind of Turks that you have here, they're much more conservative, and the way they're thinking about, how to construct a society and how to organize it is much different from what you guys have here. My first girlfriend was actually also Turkish, so again, it's always funny when people say that you're anti, and they were the ones that their family didn't want to even meet me because I wasn't a Muslim. So there's always been this tension. I've had it when I was growing up in junior high school, elementary school, when I played soccer. There was always this tension right from there. But like you said, I think ever since 2015, with a crisis and Merkel basically opening up the gates here and letting everyone in, very unorganized and very unapologetically, I think that's when things really started cooking and heating up. And back, we had one party at the time, the AfD, which was founded as a populist party in the, I think, 2012 or 10. I don't know. They've been around for like 14, 15 years or something, I think. They were founded originally as a populist party for the economic situation, right? So they were economic populists during the Euro crisis, which Germany was basically funding as the biggest economy in the EU. So, but then they kind of also added that topic in, and they were like the only ones speaking out about it. And they say like, this uncontrolled immigration is going to cause a lot of trouble. Like, and the thing is, this is also different immigration. These are grown men who, they come without their wives at times, and they come without their families, and the one seeking asylum supposedly, and don't speak the language. A lot of them have potential to be very aggressive. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing it now in the stats. Even the German government is publishing these stats around the violence, the link to the crime, the gang rapes. I mean, it's just all going up. Again, the German government itself. So when you say, "Oh, this is all anecdotal," what you're hearing, or you're reading the wrong, sorry, you're reading the wrong media. It's like, no, like it's in the data, and what the data doesn't even contain. That's like always the issue. It even has so. The moment you get a passport, you get there's like handouts happening right now. So the moment you are German, you're not going to even appear in that, or you're not going to appear in those stats, because it's only if it's your only passport that you have, right? So the moment, let's say you come from one of these countries and you get a passport, you also have that nationality now, you're not even going to appear, but you might still commit a crime. And so I think, again, like kind of that's the big elephant that everyone is seeing. Even the left-leaning friends that I have many of them, even they're saying like they're more uncomfortable now, leaving the house and going to a park and going in the subway. And again, it's not like you go out here like that you get shot or something, but there's just this growing tension. And like you were just mentioning, like in the open, growing and openly saying in these protests that they're doing, or these demos, that they want to establish that Sharia law, and that's the way to go. And they're very honest about it. And politicians are still playing it down, being apologetic, blaming it on the trauma and I don't know what, and sort of saying that right-wing extremism is the number one threat to our country, which is a joke. I think it's the boogeyman. Like you said, it exists in the fringe. There's some real idiots, like actual Nazis. But to say that that's the biggest threat to our country, I think that's very irresponsible.
I noticed a massive switch with the Israel-Palestine thing. So I lived in Copenhagen in 2019, and at that time you couldn't say like, "Hey, I don't think these Muslims are integrating that well," even though they were forming ghettos and there was getting some shaky things going on. A couple of years later, they cleared out all the ghettos. They said, "We can't have this. You got to integrate." They don't want to turn into Sweden, because Sweden went through a crap ton of problems, especially in Malmo, right across the bridge. But I've noticed, like on the Reddits, like on Reddit Europe, which is very liberal, I mean, they're all talking about this can't last and this isn't the European way. And all of a sudden they're going like, we need to kick them out. I'm like, damn, like you guys were shunned from society. You were saying this a couple of years ago. This was, racist, or Islamophobic and whatnot. But here's what I want to say though, too, is I've been around most of Europe, and I will say like the second, third generation, Muslims or immigrants are some of the like hardest entrepreneurial workers. The best service I've gotten so far in Munich has been this phone repair store he was a Kurd. Was it from Iraq or Iran? They're the Kurdistan that's like mixed in between them. And this dude comes over, he works his ass off. He's like, dude, I try hiring employees and they're stealing from me. And, I got to sit here every day. I'm just trying to like make a way for my family, like smiling the whole time, doing good business. And I've noticed that in Italy. I noticed that in Denmark, in Poland a little bit. There's not as many immigrants, but I will say, like, I think the older generations, I don't know, I think a lot of them took their opportunity and ran with it and created a good lifestyle for themselves. But it does seem, like the fresh off the boat or the newcomers, it's like, oh, I can sit on my ass and get paid, or I can pop out 10 kids and get millions of dollars for it. Like, it seems like a different switch. And I think some of them are fighting with each other. Like they give, like I saw this other day at the English Garden in Munich. Everything was a peaceful, day. Everyone was, having German beer, Hakuna Matata, family and kids. And all of a sudden these dudes that did not like Germans started like fighting each other in a group, like fighting friends, and people come in there, try to like separate it. And there's this old like German man. He goes in there. He's like, please just stop. And they just laugh at him. Like, get the fuck out of my way. Right. All of a sudden this other dude who looked Middle Eastern came in. There's like, hey, you need to stop. Like, get the hell out of here. This is wrong. They start fighting this guy. And this guy's fighting them back. And then finally other people start getting in there. But it was another Middle Eastern being like, yo, shut the fuck up. Everyone's enjoying your day. You're fighting in front of kids because they crashed into a family and bikes. And it was like a weird dynamic. But what I noticed here, which was really scary, is at the start, everyone just froze. They didn't do nothing, like, oh, I don't want to say anything. I'm scared. Just let them cause a mess. And who cares if they run into families and their bikes? I was like, what the hell is this? And then some Middle Eastern dude came in there and got those dudes out of there. So that's my observations.
Dude, I think you're spot on. I mean, this is the interesting part. And I think, like you said, also the dilemma. And I think that doesn't make people like you and I, as I like to maybe sometimes label us extremists or whatever, right? Because like you just mentioned, I have no issue with anyone coming here, working their ass off, and also because there's a lot of stupid German people, right? But they just happen to be born here. But if like I know a lot, I grew up with a lot of immigrants too, and I have no problem with them. Like the way, if, as long as you kind of fit in, I also don't mind if you practice your own religion or whatever, do whatever. I mean, I really don't care. But there's certain, I think that we have a certain law, and it's based on our culture as well. And to say that we not just that we're gonna not tolerate yours, but trying to replace it with ours. I mean, that doesn't fly with me. Like you said, that goes back to the beginning of the conversation where you just noticed about Germans, people then just freezing. It's this thing of this inability to stand up for yourself, having some self-esteem and some pride, because it's been shoved down your throat 24/7 since you were a kid. It's like shame, shame, shame for a period that again lasted 12 years. It was an awful, awful, awful thing that happened. We don't have to talk about it, but again, like can we move on from there in a way, in a healthy way? And yeah, this is and I think, but the funny thing, I was curious to get your thoughts on this, because at the same time, this is not just a topic that's a thing in Germany, right? Like if we look at people, the red pill movement, all of that, that's a Western phenomenon in a way, right? I mean, we're seeing a big thing, big topic in the US. We see people like Andrew Tate, all these people popping up, Jordan Peterson, right? So there's a huge demand for it in a way. So I find that fascinating how I would probably say like how this sort of influence, and I think a lot of it would probably come from the US, from this more progressive, ideologically driven, the feminism, toxic masculinity, all these kind of concepts. That kind of a lot of it comes from the US, and then how that gets merged with our own situation, and yeah, it ends up to what you were saying. That's like the result. There's like a brawl in the street, and nobody's doing anything.
Little kids like around it. I was disgusted. You know what I mean? It was just like, and here I am thinking, oh, if I do anything, I'm going to be the one that's deported, right? So I think the pendulum swinging, like you said, with the Andrew Tates, the people speaking up and so forth. And you're right. A lot of it does come from the United States. Our biggest export right now is probably the woke shit, the progressive stuff, all that, which is sad because I guarantee you probably 75%, maybe 70 Americans don't believe in this shit. Maybe another 20% just go along with it because they're scared. But I know for sure half the country's like, what the hell is going on? But
Yeah,
that's what I want to ask you about too. All the USA military bases in Germany. I've been saying this for a long time. I think there's like 50 confirmed. They've canceled, like they had 250 total before, and there's the hidden ones. I mean, to me, that's an occupied state. United States military bases are in Germany. And Germany has the most money in the EU, probably makes the most decisions, has the most power, it seems like. You say we talk about Brussels and unelected bureaucrats and whatnot, but Germany, got the Italians on the euro. The Italians hate you guys for that. There's a lot of power in Germany, but who runs Germany? In my opinion, I played a lot of Total War. If you have all these military bases in someone's place, it's a client state. You're occupied. So, what are your thoughts on that topic relating to the influence of the United States over Deutschland?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest. Again, this big history, the way that we grew up is sort of that the U.S. was this big savior, right, after World War II, and helped, the Marshall Plan, all those things, and helped to build up the country, and therefore they are our friends. And again, as you know, I'm a big fan of potentially the U.S. itself. I love that country, but at the same time, as you just pointed out, when the NSA scandal hit, all of those things, you just realize at the end of the day, each government is kind of looking out for themselves. And yeah, like you just mentioned, I wasn't even aware of that number. I thought it was lower than that, but yeah, I don't think that sits well with a lot of people. And there's the interesting thing. I think there's a general sense, even across parties, like even across, doesn't even matter if you're like more to the left, more to the right, more to the center. I wouldn't call it anti-Americanism, but it is always sort of a spicy topic for a lot of people. I mean, maybe also because again, that gets mixed up because of the capitalism against the more socialist leaning people as well, and in the US kind of stands for capitalism more than anything else. But I think, and also going for that US has exported. I mean, we have in a way become Americans if you think about it, also culturally, right? And through the movies, the music, in order to not become Russians, it was like the alternative after the war. And I think like to disentangle that, it's a challenge. And I think as much as there's good things, and I think people are across the board, I would say, sort of not too happy with it. And that's, and by the way, that's why I even think, and this is not anti-Americanism, but I think having a strong Europe per se, right, as a Yeah, I mean, we have a union right now, but a better version of that. In principle, I think it's not a bad thing to be less dependent. But yeah, I think we've given that up a long time ago, and yeah, it'll be interesting. I think also now, if we think about the US's influence in the world going down, and sort of like where's Germany gonna lean towards too, right? Like if you think about everything that's happening in the East, I mean, even beyond Russia, what's coming from China, and I think that's part of a lot of people saying like we kind of want to we're not dependent on the US the whole time, but I think that's what it is in reality, right? It's like if the US says something, you're gonna have to do something. It's exactly what you said, because they still have that grip on our country as since World War II. And I think just telling people that that's a good thing and they're protecting us, all of this nonsense, yeah, I think that should be reconsidered.
Yeah, that's why this whole Ukraine Russia thing is very crazy to me, because I can see a lot of propaganda. I can see all the shenanigans we did in there before the war. I don't think Russia is the saint of anything, but it's just sad because I know how important it is for the USA to keep control over Europe, but we have to go through this thing that is people are just getting massacred, and obviously our tax money. But I'm like, okay, hey, this is more important for the future of the dollar, for the future of America, that we win this war, assert our power. I mean, we're fighting in Ukraine, Israel, maybe Taiwan, and it's chaotic. And as much as I dislike kind of like the current state of the United States compared to like maybe the 80s or the 90s, you grew up and you envisioned USA and you loved it. You went there to study. I assumed
Oh
you thought
yeah,
about the
yeah.
American dream and
Oh,
whatnots.
for
And I
sure,
think there's
100%.
obviously a big difference between USA then and USA now, but I have to root. That's where the dollar keep it strong. It's my people too. It's America. Like, so I'm in a predicament on that end. I don't want to live there, but I want my country to survive. Just like you don't want to live in Brazil, but you love Germany. And let me ask you this, because you were in Minnesota, where I'm from. Tell me, mindset wise, what you learned about the American mindset compared to the German mindset. Compare and contrast for me.
Yeah. I think I have to preface this a little bit with some context, because I think every exchange student, when they go out there, they want to go to to LA, to New York, because again, like that's what we've been fed through films and shows and whatnot. So when I heard, not to offend, sorry, when I got the letter that I was going to go to Minnesota, I was actually crushed, because I haven't really never thought much about it, and it just didn't seem as exciting. In the end, I had the best time of my life, because you know what life there is like, right? Like, you have the lakes, and you have you have a real winter, and you get to do all these cool activities. So that was all new to me, and so I loved it. I was in this small city called Forest Lake, which, from what I've been told at the time, it was in 2008. Actually, I was there when Obama was elected, so it was very fascinating to watch. And I went even to the pep rallies. I saw Michelle Obama. I saw Al Franken, the senator, before he got Me Too'd. And yeah, so I think Minnesota itself is more progressive, right? I would say. I'll get back to your main question, but I think where it was a very conservative city. People have made jokes about this.
Outside the cities is conservative. The cities
Yeah,
is where the progressives are. Yep.
yeah. So that was interesting. But I think, coming back to your main question, I think the thing that's always drawn to me to the US to this day, and there's similarities to Brazil. It's really this attitude of like, let's just do it. This like this confidence of like, hell yeah, let's just go for it, and the ability and thinking that we can actually do it. And we don't have this in Germany. It's really this idea of, well, what if? Let's calculate the risk, and I don't know. And so I think that always triggered me and pissed me off. And I think all of us that have left the country a lot of times, I think you're not a typical German in that sense anymore. I mean, when I'm leaving the country, you realize how German you are. But I think that was one of the biggest differences. At the same time, I will say, I think it's a stereotype, it's a main cliche, but I think it was true in my case. There was a lot of ignorance, which was really about, and again, it's because of how education happens there, right? Like, history was really focused on how great the US is, what the US has all done, and not even talking about like going back to the history and your type of shaming, what's coming from the left with slavery, all of it. I'm not talking about that, but just in general, it's like, we are the greatest, we're the best, and I think everything else was sort of really left out. And some of the questions I got at the time was just so shocking. If Germany is a continent, and if Hitler is still running the country, and just all the stuff. I also got a lot of Nazi jokes, even from teachers who said like, yeah, Germans like to be in trenches and shit like that. And but yeah, I mean, I didn't take it personally. I had a good time. I think, as you probably know, if you go to a different country and you try to make an effort to fit in, I think people gave me a lot of respect for that. They said like, the fact that to them it was a big deal that I spoke German and I spoke English decently, and then when I knew some Spanish from my school, when I wasn't there, I was just acing it without doing anything. So I think people thought it was like very impressive. But they really appreciate if you like that country and you show interest for it, which I think I did. And yeah, all of it was just so different. The Thanksgiving, the pep rallies, the homecoming, the prom. I actually went twice. I went back the next year. I was fucking heartbroken when I had to leave after 10 months. I'll tell you this. I was crying like a baby at the airport because yeah, I tell you this, man, I wanted to live there. I thought this was going to be my thing forever. I had a crush on my neighbor, who was very, very, very cute woman, a girl at the time. And then I also had politics, by the way. So I had political science as a class, and I was just thinking about this the other day because I learned the whole thing. It was that was actually, by the way, very, very interesting. The school system in that sense, I thought it was better because it's really more about when you get your report cards. It's just the grades that you get. In Germany, we have a thing where you get also a verbal grade, right? So like how much have you participated in class and whatnot, and that's more subjective. This was super objective. Like you get your report card, and not like in Germany, you don't go to the teacher and you complain about it and you kind of negotiate your grade, or worse, your parents do it for you. Like that's what we all have. But yeah, the political science at the time, I learned all these things. What a filibuster is, and kind of like I knew all the presidents, I knew all the states, I knew all the capitals, and I mean, it wasn't realistic, of course, but I was thinking like, I want to be president of the United States. This is so cool. Like, I was so pumped up. And I think, again, that's the thing that I love about the US, which I think we can have more of in Germany, going back to the earlier question, where maybe some of us might say the US might have too much of it to some degree, or maybe some humbleness would be nice. I think we lack that. And I think like the kind of a balance of that would be ideal.
Yeah, I've said this too many times. For one, USA is the land of extremes, the highest highs, the lowest lows, but it's also the land of delusion. So that mindset you were talking about is, if you believe it or not, the reason we put a man on the moon. It's the reason Hollywood spread its wings everywhere. It's the reason we became the richest country on earth. It's also the reason we're fat. It's also the reason we don't know where Germany is. Like we think it's a continent. It's the reason that we're not culturally anything. The Euros make fun of us so much. But the best meme ever is the Don Draper with the little intern kid, and they're in the elevator, and the little intern kid, he's like, I feel so bad for you. And Don Draper, Mad Men, he looks at him, he's like, I don't even think about you. And that's USA and the rest of the world. That's how it used to be for a long time. And it seems like the last couple of years and whatnot, maybe the TikToks and all the social media, now all these Americans are not taking the highest parts of that delusional mindset and instead being like, oh yeah, we do suck, or the Europeans are right. And I should just drink a spritz and never work. And our lifestyle sucks, and healthcare, this and that and this. And I'm not, I don't live in the USA. Okay. So I'm not saying I want to live there. There's a lot of issues there, but that mindset you were talking about to me is the most special thing ever. Okay. Now, if you can keep that American mindset, live the European lifestyle in a third world paradise, I think you have the trifecta, right? So
I agree.
that's the balance on life. But I'm really glad you had a beautiful time. I think that was the perfect time to go to, is like right when the internet was still there, so you could talk to your family back home, but you weren't on your phone nonstop. You're still in your own little Minnesota bubble. Like it was just like it was a different time around that period where you're still connected. Huh?
No, I haven't thought about it. This is so true. You're right. This is like a sweet spot.
Yeah. But that's good, man. That's great that you had a beautiful time. I think there's a lot of perks in Minnesota. I just can't do the winter ever again. I refuse to stay in winters now. But the summer is so amazing. 14,000 lakes. You can. The people are really good. If you stay outside of Minneapolis now, you're always going to be safe. Very Scandinavian, German influence up there.
Yes.
So yeah, what do you think about that whole little rant? It kind of goes along with what you said.
No, I also like what you said about the trifecta, right? Like having that American confidence and then that kind of European, like what you're doing also right now, like living, sort of like appreciating life also and what's kind of around you, and having a certain aesthetic standard when it comes to culture and food and whatnot, and fashion, all those things. And then, like you said, like also this Latin American vibe as well. I think that's perfect. And again, I still love going back to the US. I was there last week. I was there last year. I went to LA, I went to San Francisco, Vegas. I was in Atlanta the year before, New York. So I think it's a bit similar, right? I mean, I would imagine that you feel similar to me, where you kind of think like, man, this is such a great country, and there's so much still there, like so much substance, and that it's sort of going down the drains right now. It's like more like a beautiful piece of art, which ironically happens a lot of times, right? And then someone just puts some shit on it, but it's still a great piece of art if you take that off. And I think our countries, in a way, have that somewhat in common.
I had a podcast recently with a dude who traveled all over the Middle East, solo travel at a young age. So it saw all these different cultures, complete opposite. And he learned, and this usually happens to Americans after a while, like in anyone who travels, the more you travel, obviously the more you appreciate your country. At the start, when you first start traveling, you're like, oh my God, we do this wrong, we do that wrong, this is so stupid. And after a while, you're like, okay, the Germans, the streets are clean. Okay. We have a good society, that safety nets and healthcare. And even though people say don't be an entrepreneur, I still have a good job, I make decent money, and I have a good life. Right. So to me, though, what is happening, and I discussed it with the dude, is America runs a lot of the social media, a lot of pop culture, and I think our problems get amplified to the extreme, right? And then when you mix in the fact that we're not as communityized as other countries, as in we live in the suburbs or we're spread out, like you get lost in this phone. And this phone is just constant negativity, right? And I think a lot of it is pushed by the Russians, the Chinese, and so forth. And though I haven't lived there full time since 2018, so I don't know if it's really changed. I've heard on the ground that it's tough for some people, but I think a lot of it has to do with this fucking phone and the social media and people. Like, bro, I got people in the third world telling me America's a shithole. I said, are you kidding me? Hey, look what you're living in. Are you going to tell me that you've never been there? You've never traveled anywhere. And now my country's a fucking shithole? Like, because you saw one street on San Francisco? Come on. So I have a hard time with it. Like, obviously, I bash USA a lot. Mostly the woke shit, obviously the society at large, the government. But, the people in the country and the ideals, I think we've lost it a little bit. Like because America's multiculturalist, right? We threw in a lot of, first was Europeans though. Okay. So it was but the Irish were way different from the British, or the Italians were way different from the British and so forth. And then, a lot of people started mixing in, but the Chinese did good. Everyone was working together, but they shared a common like thread about, okay, hey, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to pull my bootstraps up. I'm going to make my life. You're going to leave me the fuck alone. I can practice my Hinduism. You can do a Christian thing, but we're going to respect each other and move on. But now it's like, no one believes in having a fucking gun. No one believes in working hard anymore. And like, if you can't bond on ideals, you're not going to bond as a culture because you're all mixed. Right. So
right.
That's the issue I'm seeing, from afar.
No, I agree. And I would add to that, I think back then, from what I felt, even back then, that people would subscribe to the nation and to the flag, right? They would say, okay, like I have this background, but I'm so happy to be here and I'm so proud and to represent this great country and what it stands for. And I think if you're now seeing, people stomping on the flag and, you have to explain yourself, because that's actually going back to the initial topic, right? Even back then, even now still, and even more than ever, I guess, having the German flag is seen as a symbol of nationalism. So every 2 years when there's a World Cup or there's the Euros coming up right now, it's kind of okay. But other than that, like having a German flag in your fucking backyard, like you have it in the US, that's like a no. And I feel like now even that is changing in the US, which to me is crazy. Because I think if that's falling away, that's a huge issue. I'm curious. So back to the education question, what's sort of your background like? Because again, like you're to me, I guess like every American that does leave their own country, the way that the openness that they have, and the like you're very well read on culture, on knowledge. Obviously, you've traveled a lot. But would you say was that more a conditioning or result of you leaving in 2018, or is that also even ahead of that you kind of naturally inclined to study broadly, have broad interests, and then as a result of that, maybe also prompting you to say, okay, like now I actually also want to explore this.
Here's the journalist. Yeah, I can see your journalist background now. Hold on, let me get that little ring light back on. Gotta look pretty. Oh, never mind. Hold on. What part was that? 43 or 40. Okay, yeah. For one, when I heard that you can't even wave a German flag, like, and you're a nationalist, I was like, that is freaking bananas. But yeah, I didn't observe that back when I lived in the United States, that you couldn't do a flag no more. Actually, kind of. When Trump did it, it's like Trump co-opted the American flag. And now if you have the American flag, I guess it's bad, which is crazy because that's what you envisioned the USA. When you were in the USA, it didn't matter what freaking political party, what race you were, people had flags everywhere, you know? And I'm not like the biggest proponent of nationalism because I think you can get sucked into stuff that's not good for you or your family if you just completely, buy into it. And like, for example, I'm not living in the USA right now. I'm trying to make a sovereign lifestyle, where I'll be free anyway. I still want my country to succeed. I love my people, but I'm not, sitting on the front lines and being a January 6th person and rotting in a prison cell for 15 years, off horseshit. It's bullshit. And I'm still freaking really disappointed in Trump for not, pardoning them when he could have, because he was still in as a president. He could have pardoned them after the January 6th thing. But why would I do that when I can go on the beach in Brazil, when I can go chilling in Munich in the English Garden? Like, I'll fight from a distance, online, but I'm going to live my life and I'm going to do it either way the pendulum swings. Like, why the hell would I sit in Constantinople when the walls are freaking falling down and the Ottomans have raped all of Anatolia and be like, okay, this is what it is. No, I'm not the emperor. Like, I'm going to go to Venice. I'm going to go make a shit ton of money. I'm going to make sure the Ottomans don't get into the rest of Europe. But I think nationalism can be a death sentence to a lot of people, right? And it's not necessarily in your best interest. And it's sad because I think JFK, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I think that was beautiful. But I don't know. I really struggle with that, as in, I don't want to put my life in the hands of, for one, politicians, or for one, the way a country goes, or it shouldn't have to be like that, right? Like, I believe wholeheartedly that you control your life, your destiny, and no one else does, right? And you need to, take things in your life in your own hands, just like my ancestors did, who came over on the fucking boat. They weren't born in the United States. They weren't of a Native American, and they made the best life for themselves. So what's the difference between my ancestors and me? This is the nationalistic part. I'll answer your question. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I do actually, because I feel like you say, like nationalism can be misinterpreted or taken in the wrongest direction, as we've noticed that, right? Like with Hitler's expansionism sort of being the ultimate nightmare of that. But I will say where I have to challenge this a little bit is that we talk so much about diversity, and I think that's the same thing, by the way. Diversity itself is a great thing. Not just diversity of thoughts and of ideas. Like you've seen a lot of places right now. What diversity is different cultures, different foods, different ways of living, different ways of thinking. I mean, again, even in Berlin here, we have so many different cultures. That what makes this place unique, and that's a great thing. Like, I want that to still be here, and not just people who are from Europe or the US, but even people from the Middle East. That's super fascinating and interesting. Obviously, the moment it's sort of people try to impose something on you, then it becomes different. But what I was trying to say is that if there was no nationalism, no preservation of my grandpa, he was born in 1937. And he was always saying to me, even then, he was proud of what I was doing in English, and he saw that everything is getting globalized. But he was saying, Dennis, at one point, our language is going to disappear. It's going to get morphed. Like, you already see that generation right now. They're using all these English words that sort of became Germanized, but they're not. They're really English at their root. And I think that's something that we have to really think about, because if everything, I think this is why I'm also against the globalist idea. Like, one thing is being an internationalist. That's not the same as a globalist, right? You can say I'm very pro, like, traveling and all of that. I think I love it. But the globalism thing, like, which is this really almost communistic view of, like, no borders, one world government, all of this, that gives me nightmares. And I think, again, like, that's why preserving our culture, and same for your culture, I think that defines diversity in a good way. So I think we shouldn't throw that out of the window.
Yeah, I have no disagreements with that. If I want to go to a Muslim country, I'll do what I just did. I went to Tunisia. It was freaking amazing. They're more secular, but I enjoyed it very much. If I want to go to Germany, I don't want to be in a Muslim culture. I'm going to drink the beer,
Exactly.
have safe streets. And Muslim countries are actually really safe. I'm starting to really notice it. My buddy then went through all the Middle East. He did that. So I'm not saying the Muslims aren't safe, but when I go to Germany, the worst part is your national dish people think of is the doner, which is a freaking Turkish kebab, right?
Yeah,
But I want to eat Wiener Schnitzel. I want to drink fucking beer, and I want to have a good time and so forth. So yeah, I agree with you on all these points. I guess my point is this. So what is, to me, the United States of America is not America, or is not the idea of America, like the founders and the people that came on the boats and made a way for themselves. To me, the American idea is liberty, is freedom. It's, making the life you want to make, is the delusional mindset that I can do it, and that to me is what I embody, right? So I don't think I need to sit over there and yell at a wall or yell at a stupid politician, because we killed politicians back in the day. That's what the Americans did. We said, we're not paying this tax. There's more nuanced things that went involved with that, but that was the main idea. But like, screw the king, screw the overlords. We came here for freedom. We went to the frontier. We were pioneers. We killed the buffalo. We subjugated the natives. Like, we took over. We built all this stuff. You know what I mean? In 250 years, you could argue is one of the greatest empires, peak-wise power the world has ever seen, right?
yeah,
So
definitely.
to me, that is the American idealism that I subscribe to, and not necessarily like a place or a certain way of culture or whatnot. It's an idea. It can be spread anywhere, but I don't disagree whatsoever. I don't want everywhere to be the same. That's what this whole multiculturalism crap is. It's like, no, we're gonna all be the same every single where. It's like, no. Some days I want to eat Italian pizza, like real Italian pizza in Italy. I don't want to go to Italy and being surrounded by sub-Saharan Africans. Like, that's what's happening. Like, that's not Italian to me. If I want to do that, which I will, I'm going to do a little trip this summer, or probably after Oktoberfest. So then go down throughout Africa to experience that culture.
Yeah. By the way, I hope at one point you and I are going to also meet up in person, especially since you're so close. We should talk about that off the record later. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be great. I haven't been to Berlin since 2019, and I didn't mind it. It was a little too hipster and dirty and grungy, but I can explore more.
Yeah, I could do it. I can leave Berlin. I mean, let's see, right? But that would be nice. Going back to the question, though, like, sort of, what's been your, like your development and your interest in culture, and you obviously you being very well read. What's sort of the background to that?
Yeah, well, obviously, in Minnesota, it's pretty sheltered. You're in the middle of the country. You're not like a coastal person who's taking European summer vacations or whatnot. We went to Mexico, did like a Canadian thing with my family, but my family is as Minnesota as it gets, and the United States Midwest as it gets. So I think my fascination with the world and whatnot just comes from always living outside the box. Like, I never wanted to fit in. I wanted to be either the man or I'll be the lone wolf. It didn't matter to me. And I think the evolution of that came to seeing the world. I think I was never meant to be in one place or to fit along with a normal routine. I was always meant to, test things and live on the edge. So that's me, I think.
Yeah.
Bold.
No, I love it. I'm also curious, if you allow one more question, what's kind of your background in the sense, because when you make these videos on Instagram, I think there's really, I think the storytelling, the way that you tell, like that you narrate it, I think it's very entertaining. It's very well done, and also how you, like kind of the humor, the sort of it's not cynicism. It's just like there's no, actually it's not at all. But it just makes it very enjoyable to consume. It's very pleasant. So it's like, do you have any kind of background in that?
Danke. But background, what? Video editing or writing or?
Yeah, just like, there's a real element of creativity in there overall. And so I'm just curious where that comes from.
Probably just doing it. I've been podcasting for a long time. I started doing the social media stuff pretty hardcore the last couple of years, I guess. And just, you throw shit at the wall and some clicks and some doesn't. And I assume I've been influenced by the movies I watch, the people I listen to, the books I read, of course. Right. But I don't know. Like I said, man, like since a little boy, and people will vouch for it. Like, I just did things my way, or where my gut felt to go, no matter where the grain was, pulling back. Speaking of the grain pulling back, how have you gotten over the German going against the grain? because I am currently on a football team here. So I'm in the culture. Like I'm seeing all these
Right.
different types of dudes. They're playing American football. So obviously they have a taste for the USA, or why else would they be playing this game? Even though it's gotten really big here in Germany,
Yeah.
American football. They played an NFL game here, and two actually so far, or maybe last year was in Munich. But I can tell a lot of these dudes, they're afraid to kind of like put their wings out and fly away.
Yeah.
They don't like thinking outside the box. You know, if you tell them what to do, they have to do that. They can't adjust to anything that's
Yeah.
happening. So tell me, how did your brain leave? Was it from the Minnesota experience, or?
Yeah. Yeah, this is such an interesting question. I think we're very similar in the sense I've always had my therapist, she would say that I sort of have an authority issue, right? Like I've always had an issue to subscribe blindly to authorities. And I think in a way also, to be honest, I took some pride in that, and also to just by nature just sort of be different and therefore get attention for it. So I think that was part of it. But I think that didn't change the fact that I always again was questioning dogmas. I think my grandpa was the same guy that I was mentioning earlier. He was a very old school guy. He was just living his truth unconditionally, and he broke free from that since as long as I can remember. And yeah, so I was always very broad in my interests and just doing things my way, like you just said. And ironically, that was the song that played on his funeral too. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, but always when it even came to things about topics that we had to present in school, I would just do something that I was interested in. And interning, we were supposed to intern there. I entered at a newspaper. Like I was always about doing what I want to do. I was the only one who went to the US after, or another friend did, but like nobody else. I was the only one who went to a different school when he came back, a different high school. I was the only one who left the city when I went to Berlin, and then I moved to Portugal. Like I was always doing new shit and kind of trailblazing and just sort of being highly open and curious. And I think, like you said, like the lone wolf thing, I can relate to that. It's sometimes painful, honestly, because if I think back, until I was in Brazil, actually, I realized I didn't have a real group of friends. Like I know a fuckload of people. I have a lot of people coming for my birthday. I always have stuff to do if I want to do. But I feel like really just this group they just hang out with of like-minded people. I didn't have that until I was back in Brazil, since I was in the US. So that's kind of a side effect of that. But yeah, like even the way I work in software sales, how I was going about stuff, applying my journalistic style. And yeah, it's tough because you're kind of pushing up the hill in a way, because people are, I think a lot of it, they're so, like you just mentioned, they're so, especially in Germany, so consumed on one side by their own fear that they don't do it themselves, but they want to do it. And so what they will try to do is they try to pull you down so that they can feel better about themselves in a passive aggressive way, and making you doubt about yourself and saying, oh, you're not supposed to do this. Or we have this phrase in German. I don't know how much German you've picked up so far, but there's, the word, okay, man, but not as a man, but sort of as one. So for example, it would always be, oh, but this is not how one's supposed to do it, as if there was like this generalized truth and kind of this like how you're supposed to behave. And it would be as a very like lecturing, moralizing way to talk to people about stuff when you did something that was different. It's like, oh, that's not how das macht man nicht. No, 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 no. You're not supposed to do that. And it's like this shaming thing. And I always say, like, I fell for it a lot more when I was younger. Now that I've sort of last few years, it's just coming out like a volcano. And especially going to Brazil, where I'm almost now like, fuck you all. I just do whatever the fuck I want. But yeah, it was an evolution, and it makes you still doubt, especially when I was younger. But now what I think also helped, and meeting people like yourself, where you realize, yeah, I'm not alone. I'm not a weird person, And again, it's like inspiring other people, to be honest. Not to make myself bigger than I am, but people have told me that people said to me, I went abroad because of you. I did these things because of you. I went against the advice of my parents, and I studied what I wanted to. I did the job I wanted to do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And overall, it helped me build, like what I would call a rich life, right? Which for me is not just financially, but also having interesting people in my life, doing cool stuff, learning new stuff. I wrote down so I was working at a coaching company my last job, and I had a coach there too, and we kind of distilled my three biggest values in life. And the first one was growth. which I said, professional and personal growth. That's like number one thing that's non-negotiable for me. Being self-employed, being employed, having a girlfriend, not having one. But then the second one was creativity. But then the third one was actually convenience. And I think where, again, not just like not luxury, but really having access. That for me was always the thing that turned me on, right? Having shortcuts, knowing all the new shit that's coming out, and having access to the best quality of healthcare, whatever it may be. And that for me, it was like kind of building this kind of lever, right? And to build an interesting life also for my future family. And I think you cannot get that if you're always following the playbook. Like, I think you have to write your own, not even like you have to go the path that no one has walked before, because no one has been Nick before. No one has been Dennis before. There's no fucking manual. There isn't. And I realize that the thing is, the older I get, is that there is people that still try to give you advice or opinions, and you think, I would not want to live your life. So why the fuck would I listen to it? You might still have a point, and I might listen to it if I respect you, but a lot of people I don't even take seriously. And I think it only gets more as this kind of solidifies this mindset. I guess it's similar for you.
Yeah, a lot of things there. Okay, one, your grandpa sounds like a baller, playing my way. I love Sinatra. Two, 100% people that feel they don't want to follow the crowd or do what everyone else is doing. Sometimes they go to the extreme. And that's like, I just want to do something to be different. And that makes me feel good about myself because I'm not being like them. So people got to watch that, right? Like, sometimes that pop song is good. You don't need to be a contrarian listening to some underground.
I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah, but that's the problem. A lot of dudes that go their own way have issues with is being too contrarian, right? It doesn't make you unique and super cool, right? Like, three.
Can I just ask a question on that part? Because what I've been thinking about, and that's what I was saying in the beginning, being different just for the sake of it and to get attention for it. To be honest, I was observing myself the other day and thinking, okay, what if now suddenly more politicians get voted into office that I support, and more of the policies that I'm behind are now actually getting implemented? What am I going to do? Am I going to try to still look for something to be against? Or would I also be okay with saying, you know what? No, this is actually what I believe in, so I'm just going to be content with that. Because in a way, there's also a part of your identity that sort of you don't get to use anymore, right? Like looking into the rabbit hole and sort of uncovering stuff and sharing that with other people and being the messenger of all of that might just disappear, or it might get less. And I'm going to be curious about how that's going to unfold in the next few years.
No, exactly. But that's my, because growing up, I've had moments like that too, where you're just being contrarian to be contrarian. I don't think that's good for anything, and it doesn't make you your unique self and stepping into it and so forth. Your other points, okay. I do want to commend you a lot for growing up in such a society and still being able to cut the ropes loose, the chains loose. It sounds like your grandfather had a huge influence on that, which is great. Same with my father. My father always pushed me, but like I said, USA, and maybe it is a little different in Minnesota. You saw how kind of more small townish, kind of do what everyone else is doing vibe is, but you still have the delusional American mindset, right? So I think it's a lot easier for an American to kind of get to this independent mindset or live life on their own terms compared to a lot of other cultures in the world. But I do want to commend you a lot because I see in this German society living here is like, holy shit. And it's so funny though, because I see the Germans that are outside of Germany, and here's the problem with them is they've never gotten such a taste of freedom, and they lose all control. It's like everything is Candyland. This isn't real world. I live in a fairy tale. Like,
yeah,
and,
you tweeted about that, I think. Yeah, I think you made a tweet about that.
Behind closed doors, but then you see the German, like when he's actually out and about and free with no chains and no one, no peer pressure. It's fucking insane. Debauchery. True. And that's what all the Italians used to tell me too. They're like, these Germans, they're disgusting and the crap they do. But I saw in Latin America. In Latin America, I was like, holy crap, you guys got some serious issues. No one taught you any sort of like self-discipline, it seems like, But so yeah, I'm happy for you. Your other points, what was your kind of the questions you threw at me? I think I answered a couple of them. No,
I think you answered them. No, again, no. I think where the contrarian thing, I was curious about your background, sort of your. Yeah, I think yeah, we got it.
Yeah, and that's a big this damn ring light. That's a big thing though. And I love what you said about how people are saying, like, hey, I went and did this because I saw this or you influenced me. And that's a big part of this bold perceptions. Getting those messages and hearing that, inspirational feedback is obviously what keeps me going. One, and then two, it's a creative expression. You said you're going to start doing some content more and whatnot, and I highly recommend everyone else to do it.
Yeah.
Throw yourself out there, get the bumps and bruises like you do when you want to live your own independent truth or so forth. But speaking of that though, do you think it is our independent truth, or do you think it was just the media we read, the books we read, the grandfather we had in our life? Like, I've been coming to some of these conclusions about a lot of things, and we talked about Scott Adams before this, and he talks about the moist robot. This is when he was kind of saying, now I think he's just gone, way too into the politics. He was saying how we're all programmable. We're not unique whatsoever. You can hack into your own brain, through the affirmations, the hypnosis, the meditation, all stuff that I do. Like in we're influenced by everything around us. Like, who knows what the original thought is, right? Like all the stuff that you like on my Instagram, what if that was a mishmash of 1,000 things? But then that makes it special because I took the 1,000 things and I put it into my own frame, right? But I've been always battling with this thought about, oh, am I really this independent? Or did the How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis, influence me when I was 18, or the Scott Adams book, How to Fail at Everything, kind of pushed me here?
Yeah.
Or your Minnesota classmates, put that in your brain that you need to be delusionally confident and not know where Germany is on a map.
I agree with you. So one of my friends said the other day, like, we all kind of live in the same algorithm, right? Or some of us, like the moment, I think, have you seen this meme where there's the from the scene from Toy Story where Buzz Lightyear is in the store and he realizes he always thought he was special. He was the only one. And then he realizes there's this shelf full of him, like full of Buzz Lightyears. And he's just like, oh, fuck. It's actually a really big topic of my therapy. Also, my therapist always says to me, like, she says, like, you are unique, all of you, but you're not special. And I think in a way, the way that culture has gone, it kind of gets massaged into us that we are special. And then I've had this a lot of times because that's how I grew up. That's how I was conditioned. Like, people, because of how I look, like, I always had I got positive perceptions just for that. And then when you go out into the real world and people suddenly there's a first setback, that you get your first D on an exam, or you get fired the first time, or someone breaks your heart, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I was told. But yeah, back to your main question. I think I think a lot of it's just where you kind of so happen to be at right now, and what there's a lot of chance, what kind of books you happen to read, and I think also a lot of what you talk about on social media is really, it's sort of derived. People is deriving something from someone else, who's deriving it from someone else, and so what's the original thought, the original idea? There is actually a book. Let me just give me a second here that I have. It's actually written by an American guy. It's called "Where Good Ideas Come From." I mean, this is the German version of it, but he is. I think he's like a pop science author, and he's talking about how a lot of, as the title suggests, a lot of ideas that come from where people were saying, "Oh, like, he invented that thing. He came up with this." The truth is, it was a lot of it. I'm not trying to take this away from anyone and their skill and their ability, but the fact of chance, and he's making a lot of comparisons to how that happens in biology. There's just a certain moment where there's a right time for an idea, and there's a sense of synchronicity, maybe even whatever it may be. He's not going into the spiritual route there, but what he's saying is, I think one of the examples was that what's his face, who invented the phone, Bell, right? Was that the guy
Edison?
who invented? Wonder if it was Edison or Bell.
Oh, light. He took the light bulb. Edison took the light bulb from.
I think it was Bell,
Tesla.
Alexander Bell, or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, there was an example of where he had filed that patent. Someone else had been working on the exact same thing and just happened to try to file the patent a few hours after, and nobody knows who the fuck that guy is, right? And so, yeah, I think it's just like you're saying, like, having that humility of, like, everything that I'm now discovering on the web, and sort of like, oh, I have access to this, and it's kind of feeds to narcissism. I think that's what you write about, where I have access to this one thing now, this one information, nobody knows about it. And it's like, no, there's like a lot of fucking people who, if you watch that video, there's like hundreds of thousands of views or millions of it. And yeah, so I don't even know what's original anymore. I think obviously I like working a lot with my unconscious. I work a lot with my dreams, and so like if you, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the whole Jungian approach at Carl Jung about the collective unconscious. Even if from that perspective, even that is uh, not down to yourself, but it's just like a progression of human nature since it existed. It's been passed on. So that's like his concept. Why kids can come up with certain symbols that they've never seen in their life, and they just come up from their dreams and from their unconscious. That's like his theory. I think there's a lot of truth to it. So yeah, I don't think that there's a starting point. If anything, like going back since human beings have existed. So I don't know where that is.
Yeah, and so this is my point to counter the point I just made, is I look at a dude like Kanye, who, if you actually listen to what he says on a lot of different things, you'll realize this dude is a fucking mad genius. Okay, especially if you listen to his music, and I was totally against Kanye probably in before 2016, and then my roommate, he's like, dude, no, you need to listen to Kanye, right? I said, dude, he's just some rapper, like, you talking about hoes and can't tell me nothing and whatnot. He's like, no, dude, listen. And this is a dude that suffers from contrarian thing too. I think one of his famous quotes was like, as soon as they love you, make them hate you. And he's constantly playing that marketing game and so forth. But I love his independent thinking and his creative genius, right? And anyone that is not biased on some of the crazy shit he say will say like, this dude is a musical genius. There's no question about it, right? He did it with the clothing too. People bought him up like, all of the Yeezys and so forth. But here's what I say, and he talks about this all the time. About one, his mother said, oh, you're so special, you're this and that. But he never got away from like that kid mindset, from like a 5-6-year-old like creative spirit, and not letting society tell you anything of what to do. Just like, oh, I feel this, like I'm going to try to bring it out of me and make it a reality. And he goes into this so much on a lot of his interviews, and I can't articulate it as beautiful. But my main point is this: is you can have these questions about, oh, am I independent? And you're probably not, or am I special? Maybe not, but do not let the action, do not be stopped from the action, right? Still put your shit out there, still do it, because what about all the people that wrote all those famous works? They probably had the same thoughts in their head. Oh, I wasn't as good as Plato. I wasn't as good as Socrates. Like, why am I doing this? Or every piece of art is the hero's journey, in a different package, right? So, yes, I don't think we're all little special snowflakes, but I think we all have something to give, as cliche as that is, and we tap into that universal consciousness and express it through our own subjective viewpoint on reality, and that's beautiful. So how about that for some philosophy?
Yeah, I'm just going to add a closing thought on top of this, because I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think also, like you just mentioned, a lot of people don't even know, like for example, curation, right? You're not creating anything yourself, you're just curating it. But the fact that you have built up an audience who says like, the way that you curate, I'm getting access to information I've never had before. I think that by itself is fine and deserved, and that's totally okay. I think that's a good thing. And like you just said, like we've never, again, like I have never been like Dennis or Nick have never existed in this sort of time of the year, like right now, like that's never existed. So I think there's always a new context, and it's so many variations that go into this. And I think that's fine. Like, we shouldn't beat ourselves up for it. I mean, a lot of shit that I came up with, like what's really original of it, I don't know. I think that then there's also a more pragmatic approach to it, which is, we have to make a living, we want to build families, we want to entertain ourselves, and that by itself, occupies us and goes into it. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's we shouldn't stress so much about that. And like you said, like even people like Nietzsche, whoever, like they've read all the greats in the past, and then they interpret. If you look at Peterson, what is Peterson doing? Jordan Peterson, like he's really just picking up Jung, Nietzsche, all these guys, and sort of like interpreting or presenting it in a new way. There's a market for it. I think as long as there's a market or appetite for it, all good.
And he's changed lives with that material.
And he's changed lives.
God knows guys' ears if he didn't do it.
Exactly.
And he had his own little spin to it in the 2024 viewpoint of the world and so forth. So that's my whole point, is do not let it stop you from that action. Create, stop fucking consuming, right? Hey, to wrap this thing up, because we got to get going here because you had a meeting. I'm cognizant of my guest time. Okay, your top 5 things you like about Germany, and then we're going to do the top advice you would give to someone like me that's moving to Germany, that's living in Germany as a foreigner. So start with the pros, because we kind of hit a little mean on Germany. We said a lot of good things, but I want the pros of your country.
Yeah, I think if we just talked about living in places like Brazil, for example, South America, where everything is more chaotic. I mean, they themselves admit that, and there's context to it. I think on the flip side, I just realized this being back now, having this sense of organization again, which can become too neurotic, and it is too neurotic. But then that doesn't mean we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like I think anyone that I've talked to, they enjoy working with people, German people, for that reason, is because they know it's organized and there's purpose to that, right? You need both, like Peterson says, you need chaos and purpose and order. So I think that's definitely a huge thing. Obviously, if we think about like I was saying, we have these 12 years of awful history, and it should not never be forgotten, obviously. But I think what's all been before that, if you think about the impact that Germans had on architecture, I can only recommend the reading some of the Nietzsche, Hermann Hesse. I don't know if you know the guy who wrote Siddhartha and Steppenwolf. I mean, that's just as good as it gets. Even I've gifted these books to a lot of my friends who are not not Germans, and I say like it helps you not just understand the German archetype a little bit, but before the war especially, but also because it's just like great life advice, and again philosophic. But I think that's a good thing. Like all these people that we have, we always say we're the country of thinkers and poets, and I think that there's truth to it. Again, if you take it too far, not good, but there's a lot of good elements in it. Let me think. You said five.
Even you keep bringing it up, homie. It's just
Which one?
crazy to me.
Which one?
You take it too far, or this 12 years. It's like, homie, just don't talk about it. I don't care. Like I was just in Cambodia, like end of 2022, and the Khmer Rouge, which almost every single one of them participated in, that's still alive to this day. They killed 3 million out of 8 million people in there. They don't talk about it. It is what it is. They move on.
No, I agree with you. What I was just saying is no, but what I was I agree with you, which is exactly my point. Like if all the great stuff that we had before that, hundreds of years of doing great stuff, right? Like that's always gets forgotten. That's what I was saying. Like we have made so many cool contributions. But yeah, dude, I'm just realizing 5 things.
And let's not forget. If it wasn't for the Nazis, the Americans wouldn't have put a man on the moon.
Yeah,
that's a fact too. Like they did a lot of innovation as well. Like they're aesthetics, but we're not getting into it. But it's crazy to me being in here, and I probably get deported by saying this, but it's just anytime I want to talk about German history, any of this kind of stuff, it's like, okay, but we did this. I said I didn't ask about that. I'm talking we're talking about the best of Germany. It's crazy to me. To me, it's like a mass psychosis. It's wild.
But I'm just realizing, I don't know if I'm ignorant or what happens that I struggle to come to think of 5 things that I in particular like about the country, or that I miss, because I think a lot of it is also contextual, like nostalgic, right? So when I was in the US and I realized how much I like my own country, right? Because I was so far away from it, I started listening to more German-speaking music, which I never really liked, or reading things in German. I think it's actually a very nice language, although people don't think it is because it sounds so harsh and aggressive. But I think it's a very sophisticated language. And of course, all the foods. I think some people have said things about German food where I think it's very, in particular, I think because of the sort of more southern German cuisine, as if that's the whole country's cuisine. I think we have, from the places I've been to, like when it comes to especially like bakery, pastry, we have a strong culture for that. I think Germany is definitely by far some of the best. I was living in Portugal, and people were saying Portuguese bakery is so good. And I was like, dude, I mean, you have no idea what you're talking about, I think. But again, that might just be linked to people's own nostalgia. But yeah, dude, 2 more things. Let me just.
I mean, the beer, as cliche as it is the best I've ever had in the world. I like how clean it is. You don't have a bunch of shit in there. It's only 5 things by law or whatever.
I think also, I don't know how much you've got in touch with German humor, but I think that's like a lot of people think we don't have it, right? It doesn't exist. But of course, there's a very dry and, like you even mentioned, like dirty humor. If I think about how I grew up, that I think is yeah, you have. I guess you have to know the language a little bit, and a lot of like with any kind of humor. But I think that that's something that I always get back to. I mean, look, I still listen to my audiobooks a lot in German. I watch my movies dubbed in German, and some people make it seem like that's a crime. Oh, you're supposed to only do it in English. No, like I think we have very good people dubbing it. We have very good actors doing this, and I really enjoy it. I was brought up like that, even though it's an American movie. I
Hey, how
enjoy
good
it.
was All Quiet on the Western Front? I loved. I heard the book was better, but the film I loved. I loved the
I
film.
haven't watched it. We read
Oh
the
my
book
god.
in school. Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. Um, I think also what I think is nice how we treat health. I mean, it's kind of the irony. I talked. Was it you that I talked about this? Yeah, we talked about this with the natural. Yeah, yeah. So I think
The
again
stomach
having.
thing, the plant-based thing that they gave me instead of normal
Yeah,
filler.
exactly. So again, like having been to a lot of countries, seeing other countries and how they do it, and then again on one side it's ironic because we have this huge focus on this huge pharmaceutical industry, and I think there's a lot of issues with it, especially we talked about this lobbyism, the kind of um, what we saw during COVID, but at the same time, the way that we think of again, I'm not really a fan of homeopathy to be honest, but we have basically invented that. And I think that the more naturally inclined approach to health and what I talked to you about also after the war, not always popping a pill, but when you again after my grandparents, they didn't have a fucking pharmacy. They were in the bunker, and they had to think about how can I get over a cold or something, and then they came up with all these tricks. And I
Wait,
think that,
Hanover? Where were they in the bunker? Hanover?
no. They were in Bremen. They were not in Hanover. No.
So there's a bunker in Bremen. Bremen. Okay, yeah, it's north.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so yeah, or even if they were outside of it, there was a lot of shortage, and so they had to get creative around this. And I think we preserved, that I think is a good thing, that openness to thinking about, okay, like not everything has to have a surgery, not everything needs medication. And even though there's huge industry behind this, a lot of doctors will do this, still recommend you surgeries that you don't need. But still, a lot of we have this thing, this house doctor thing in Germany. I don't think that's a common thing anywhere else, really, where it's like the kind of your main doctor, like a family, I guess, like a family doctor, yeah. And they will often say, just like use something natural for now, and then we'll see, and you come back if you're not better. So I think that's a very nice thing.
Did your grandpa and your grandma in the bunker view the Americans as liberators, or what were they feeling? They were young, but how did they ever talk about that?
Definitely, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, those were the good guys. And though my grandma, she was born in '39. I mean, the night before Hitler invaded Poland, which is kind of fucked up. But yeah, she was always saying the Americans were super nice. They always gave us candy. I mean, they didn't understand them. Another thing that came up that both my grandmas were mentioning. My other grandma was born in '29. She's gone by now, but she would say it was the first time that they saw black people. That was also very interesting. And they didn't say this in a racist way or a negative way, but to them it was like, oh, that's a black person. Like I've never seen that. There was no YouTube back then. It was like, whoa, that's what is this? But yeah, they were always described as very friendly people, and the Russians were the cold and the scary ones. That was kind of how, or the Soviets, how they saw it.
All right, a couple things for the foreigner living in Germany. How do they have a good time here? Make friends if that's possible, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the stereotype, you probably have found out about this by now yourself, that this kind of stereotype that Germans are, kind of hard on the outside, but once you kind of get to them, they're very soft and like certain fruits. So I think it takes time to break into that and to get very personal with someone. Even though I think our generation is also more used to traveling and more open in general. But then again, like once you have that established, it's really, I don't know if it's for life, but it's real. It's not like, and to be fair,
It's
I
not
had
like Brazil. It's not like Brazil where we're best friends when we first meet and we never talk again, which I can't stand. That you want to move there, but trust me, after a while, it pisses you off. And I
yeah,
agree with you. So the German is not as hard as the Slavic person. The Slavic person is really an ice cube, right? You got to crack it, crack it, crack it. When you
yeah,
crack it, you feel like you have them for life, right? The German, I
yeah,
don't have as many long-term German friends, but it does feel easier to crack it, but it also doesn't feel fake if they like me
yeah.
after a night or two, like, oh, we're going to keep being friends. It's like a balance between the
I
Slavic and the
agree.
Latino.
I agree. I have to a little bit challenge you and throw this at you. So when I went back from the US, that was actually my experience. And even when I was there, it was like, first day, oh, amazing, you're the German guy, and we're going to do all these cool things together. And I'm going to visit you in Germany, and we're going to keep in touch. And again, it's not true for everyone. Some Americans, again, generalization is always an issue. A lot of them also really kept their word. But I have to say, when I was in Brazil, that was not my experience. I felt like Brazilians are very quick to easy to meet, and then once you kind of proven yourself as a as I say, gente boa, as a good person, basically, you kind of family that kind of want to adopt you, and they like it's and they text you, and so that's been my experience. I felt this more when I was in Portugal. Very nice people, help you a lot, very, very warm. But the problem is like actually even other outsiders have said this, like getting close into the inner circle, very tough. So because they always have family gatherings, they have lunch together, they go to church together. I mean, I don't know whatnot, and that was one of the reasons why I left. Also, eventually.
I'm surprised to say about the Midwest, but there's some fake in the American for sure. But the Midwest is usually more known as the more real and welcoming.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
so
I agree.
forth.
I agree. I agree.
But wait until you go through shit in Latin America. Wait till shit actually hits the fan, and then you tell me what happens. I'm very curious to hear that because that is the big. There's like a point. It's all beautiful and roses and dandelions until all of a sudden it's pulled the rug underneath you. It's not everyone. Okay, I have beautiful relationships to this day. Someone is in my room that is a Brazilian right now, so it's not everyone. But I've been through some interesting experiences when shit actually hits the fan in those countries. So, any other final things about the foreigner fitting in, and then we'll wrap it up.
I think again, you've been to so many countries, but I think what works everywhere is not trying to make it seem as if your way of living is the best, and having that sort of humility to be willing and anything you're doing there to learn, right, and not putting yourself above. And I think in any culture, people will go above and beyond if you show interest and you show that openness and that sincereness, that sincerity. Yeah, I think it's the same for Germans. I mean, as you might have noticed, Germans, like anyone else, like to talk about, oh, we invented this or we did this, because it's part of your identity. It's part of who you are. It makes you feel worthy or seen or whatever. And I think it's the same for us. And especially, like we talked about, if it's not always about the war, and if it goes a little bit beyond that, it's very refreshing.
I've noticed this for everyone. If you talk to Germans about their history and you don't bring up what you brought up too many times, but you say, hey, talk to me about the Holy Roman Empire or, the Franco-Prussian War or non-war stuff, they're like, what? You want to talk about that? Like, you don't want to talk about, and then it's really interesting, like how excited they are to speak about the German way of life, the culture, the history, and they appreciate it a lot. So I definitely would recommend any sort of expat traveler to talk to the German about things they're not used to getting hounded about.
Definitely.
Awesome, Dennis. All right. Can people somehow reach out to you? I know we're going to leave the Twitter anonymous, but maybe send them through Instagram or something. I can do that.
Definitely. Or yeah. So definitely Dennis.Sprute. So it's SPRUTE. My last name. I always say Sprite with a U. I'm also on LinkedIn, so that's more where I'm more corporate and more careful. But yeah, so definitely on those. So I think Instagram is a good place where I'm also sharing a lot of my traveling stuff and my reflections and my politics too, to be honest. So yeah, that's a good place.
All right, and you're leaving to Brazil when?
Waiting for my visa still. Still haven't got it. So let's see.
All right, perfect. Well, you come to Munich, or I'll make my way to Berlin soon.
I'm serious. Yeah, I'm serious.
Travel vlog. Yeah,
I'm serious.
We'll have a good talk and go from there. All right, appreciate you coming on, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Thanks for having me, brother. Take care. Speak soon. Ciao.
Live bold, everyone else.